to the April Triangle J Board of Delegates meeting. We've got a very, our agenda tonight, there's a lot of interesting topics and lots of things to learn, particularly the American Rescue Plan, because we've been trying to find more information on what we can use the proceeds for, and tonight we're going to learn a lot about moving forward with some additional stimulus money. So I look forward to the presentation as well as the other presentations we have. There's a lot on our agenda, and we're going to go ahead and start as soon as possible. I just want to go over the rules tonight. Meeting etiquette is that you please mute unless you're speaking. You can use the chat box if needed. And if you're going to be speaking, please turn on your webcam so people who know who is speaking. And since this is a virtual meeting, the state law, when we do have a vote, requires everyone to announce their name in their vote. So Elena will be doing a roll call for the voting, and at this point, I will turn the meeting over to Elena to do a roll call for us to have attendance tonight.
Thanks, Chair. So I just want to quickly outline, it's going to be a little bit different than we've done in past meetings. So the directions are on the screen in case you miss what I say, but I'm going to say community, your community name. I'm going in alphabetical order of community. When you hear your community said, just reply with your name. And if there's a vote, you can also provide your vote. And if you're aware that both the delegate and alternate are on from community, please have the delegate speak first. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Our staff are monitoring. So I am going to start with Aberdeen.
Will Mullaney.
Anger.
The mayor is muted, so I know he's there.
Yes, I see him speaking.
Present, I hit it, but it didn't work.
Not a problem. Apex.
Brett Gant.
Archer Lodge.
Wilson.
Mark. Benson. Broadway.
Thomas Beal.
Thank you. Cameron. Carborough.
Randy Haven O'Donnell.
Carthage. Carey. Chapel Hill. Just a reminder to mute. I think folks might not be able to hear me over. Chatham County. Clayton. City of Durham. Durham County. Fuquay-Varina.
Larry Smith.
Thank you. Garner.
Ken Marshburn, present.
Thank you. Goldston. Hillsborough.
Kathleen Ferguson.
And Matt.
Thank you. Holly Springs.
John McGraw.
Just the microphone.
Johnson County.
Just the microphone.
Henley. Knighton. Thanks, Jessica. Lee County?
Did you hear that? I'm sorry. It just said I'm no longer muted, so I wasn't.
No, you're fine.
Okay, thank
I got you. Lee County?
Kirk Smith.
Thank you. Micro? Moore County? Morrisville?
Steve Rao.
Thanks, Steve. Orange County?
Sally Green.
Thank you. Pine Level? Pinehurst?
Kevin Drum.
Pittsboro? Princeton?
Don Rains.
Raleigh? Robbins? Rollsville?
Ronnie Kern, present.
Thank you, Ronnie. Sanford? Selma?
Byron McAllister.
Thanks, Byron. Siler City? Smithfield?
Andy Moore.
Southern Pines? Bath? Wake County?
Susan Evans, present.
Wake Forest?
Chad Siri, present. Chad
Thanks,
Siri,
John.
present.
Gotcha. Wendell?
Joe DeLoach.
Thank you. Wilson's Mills?
David McCowan.
And Zebulon? Great, we have a quorum.
Excellent. We will proceed with our agenda tonight, and there is a presentation for the American Rescue Plan, which all of us needing more information on, and I'll turn it over to Elena, who will introduce the speaker.
Thanks, Don. So I'm really excited to have Leslie Mozingo joining us tonight. She is going to be talking about the American Rescue Plan, providing some updates about it, and hopefully answering some questions. She'll definitely get more into the details on it. There is definitely some information that is still unknown, but she's going to provide as much information as she can with what we know from the federal government about the funding coming down. So I know Leslie needs to share her screen. Leslie, if you want to go ahead and do that and take over, feel free to do so. We see your slides, so you're good. We're not hearing you though if you're speaking.
Can you hear me yet?
Yep, that works. Oh, you might be muted again.
Okay, how about that?
There's a lot of...
If you want to try on your phone again, that might be better.
Can't hear you now.
Nope, we can't hear you, Leslie. If you'd like, I'm happy to share or have Ron share. And if you just want to call in, that way you don't have to. Hold on one second. Looks like you're joining.
I was going to say I have on this slide.
Let's see if this works now. Are you getting the sound?
Nope, that works perfectly.
You still can't hear me, can you?
No, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
We can hear.
Hear you loud and clear. What happened?
I'm not sure. Leslie, can you hear us?
I'm assuming she can't. Hopefully she sees my message in the chat.
Elena, while we're working out those, item number, the first item, actually review of the agenda. I will go over while we're getting these difficulties worked out. And everyone has seen the agenda and request consent for the agenda that we have attached. If anyone wants to object, then we'll have a discussion. But we move forward with the agenda that we have before us. So, and with that, if we're ready for the presentation, if not, if we still got technical difficulties, then Lee can go into the budget. Leslie, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I don't think you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
You can hear me now? Oh, good.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now I'm going to try to share screen again. It seems like something goes wrong, but we'll, okay, now, can everybody see the screen?
We can.
And you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Ah, technology, beautiful. Okay, terrific. I'm so sorry. I dialed in early and everything, but we just seem to be having some glitches. All right, let me jump in because I know you got a really full schedule. Again, my name is Leslie Mazingo. I'm the owner of Strategics. I also have on screen with me this evening my business partner, Ron Ham, and Ron's going to also be monitoring the chat box in case there's questions that come up as I work through these slides. Very quickly, we got a lot of information to cover, so I'm probably going to talk a little bit fast, almost like a machine gun, but we'll try to cover it all and make it digestible. So the American Rescue Plan, as most everyone knows, was signed into law on March 11th. There's the public law number 117.2, which is significant because it means it's only the second bill during this Congress to be signed into law, or the number 2 bill to be signed into law. It is a $1.9 trillion aid package. It includes, for the first time, state and local fiscal recovery fund. We're going to talk mostly about that tonight. But I also want, we're also going to cover very briefly, I want to make sure everyone is aware that in addition to the direct allocations, there are literally billions of dollars, I mean billions and billions of dollars that have been allocated to additional existing programs and grants that so they can get the money out quickly. A lot of those are in current funding mechanisms, and they're in addition to your direct allocations. But in all of those programs, the various expiration dates, the times to apply and the expiration dates for spending those dollars do vary by program. So I highly encourage everyone to know which programs you're interested in, pay really close attention to them individually because they are different. And I'm going to actually show you some examples of that later on in the presentation. So again, American Rescue Plan, trillions of dollars, broken down into several different ways that funding is going out. In the billion-dollar category, the highlight for most everyone on this call, I'm sure, is the $350 billion for state and local governments. We're going to talk a lot about that. But as you can see here, too, there's additional funding, in the areas of community and economic development, transportation, housing, food security, aids to education systems, additional aid for child care, and then, of course, the vaccine and the testing, which has been ongoing. The key about the American Rescue Plan is this really is the relief part. Okay, it's the relief and the start on the road to recovery. And this package, is part of the president's 3-part plan. And again, I'm going to cover a lot of that tonight as well about the 2 other packages that are out there. So this is the relief and the recovery, and then we've got the rebuilding for the future portion that is coming in, these next 2 packages. So let's jump into, let me get a thing here to switch. Okay, so the state and local recovery fund, again, $350 billion for state and local government. And I think everyone probably has seen the allocation chart by now. I just want to make you aware that, of those amounts allocated to you individually, those are not finalized yet. They have to be finalized by the Treasury. So when those amounts come out with the guidance, then you can count on them. But the really great thing about this recovery fund is the amount of money that they gave to states and to counties and to municipalities. And the way they did it this time, which is different than the CARES Act, they actually gave each of these units of government their own pot of funding. And they gave the same amount to counties that they gave to municipalities nationwide. So no one is having to rely on the other for that funding. So in addition to, literally every local government, every city, every town, every county, tribes, every local government in the nation is getting something. And they don't have to necessarily, wait for it to pass down from someone else. And the state itself is getting an additional a little more than 5.3 billion. And this, of course, is even above the CARES Act funding. And so they have until the end of December of this year to spend their CARES Act money. They've got this money coming in on top of that. I don't actually personally know if even all the CARES money is gone. So there's just a tremendous amount of money coming in, to the area. You have, the way the funding is being distributed is by a CDBG formula that's been modified. However, it's important to understand that the CDBG rules don't necessarily apply to how these funds are being spent. They're just using the formula because it's established and it's an easier way to get those funds out as quickly as possible. So, and again, back to the allocations, if you don't know your allocations, your estimated allocations, please let us know and we'll be happy to track that down for you. So the big question of the day, and I would win the lottery if I could tell everybody right off the bat exactly when this guidance is going to come out. So the big thing is the timing and when the Treasury will have this out. All we know for certain is that they're required by law to pay the first installment 60 days after enactment, which was on March 11. So that means we're quickly approaching that 60-day deadline for them to get those funds out. So you get 50% in 2021, and then you get the second 50% in 22, and it can be no earlier than 12 months from your first payment. So if you get your first payment, in the end of May this year, it'll be, even a day later, but it'll be no less than 12 months in 2022 that you get your second 50%. Now that's all for the entitlement communities. Non-entitlement communities, and I underline municipalities because this doesn't apply to counties, it only applies to municipalities, but non-entitlement communities go through the state. It is intended to be a pass-through. From what I hear from the state folks, they don't plan to really mess with the funds. They do plan to send it through as quickly as possible, but states are given an additional 30 days to distribute those funds to their non-entitlement municipalities. They are allowed up to 2 more 30-day extensions, but those are under super strict requirements. And so I really wouldn't worry too much about that. I find it highly unlikely that the folks will use that, but they do have it available and at their disposal if they run into glitches. So again, you're looking at 30 additional days possibly for states. The funds are available until 2024. There's been a lot of questions submitted to Treasury already about, does that mean they have to be obligated or fully spent? Does everything have to be completed by 2024? So I think that we'll get some of that in the guidance as well, but statutorily, they just made expiration of the funding December 31st of 24. Certification is not needed by local governments to get access to the funds. So I think in the CARES Act, there had to be like a certification of need. That is not the case under this particular program. So eligible uses, I'll be honest, we could literally spend an entire, webinar, an hour or more just on eligible uses, but I can't stress enough that we really do have to wait until the Treasury comes out with the guidance to be able to know for certain, how all the different ways this funding can be used. But, here's some, just what's in the law. Basically says it can be for, the public health emergency with respect to the negative impacts. You can use it to help pay, bonuses or additional grants to your essential workers. You can use it for lost revenue. And then what was kind of interesting, there's some, inside the Beltway talk at DC about how this provision made it in, but then they added in this water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure eligibility. And so that was actually from Senator Manchin, West Virginia, got that added in for something he wanted in order to secure his vote. But in any case, you have that additional eligibility use there for certain types of infrastructure. And so really overall, the thing that I want to say is that I know this is kind of vague and it's hard to understand. And again, the guidance that comes out will be much more enlightening, but they really are trying very, very hard to be as flexible and as unrestricted as possible. They want folks to be creative. They want people to think about things that are otherwise very hard to fund, that these funds might be able to help you do. But I will say that, as you're going through it, the thing that you really want to try to do is make sure that it does pass that COVID-19 economic impact test, because as you'll see, there's a few things here that you can't do. You can't use it in terms of, reducing your tax revenue or reducing taxes that, that are upon your constituents. You can't use it to any kind of pension fund at all. And the most important thing about knowing your uses before you go down that path is that any misuse of funds are subject to repayment. So this program works a little bit differently than our typical grants program. And a competitive grants program, you apply for the funds, you tell them how you're going to spend it. They say that's great, terrific. They give you the money, and then, or you spend the money and you draw down the funds, but you've already gotten it approved in terms of how you plan to spend the dollars. These funds are very different. These funds actually are going to go directly into your bank accounts, and they're available until 2024 or until expended. And instead of saying ahead of time how you plan to use them, you have that flexibility to use them any way that fits you best. And then where the government oversight comes in is in reporting and compliance. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too, in terms of making sure that you keep your records, keep really good records for that reporting and compliance, because the last thing you want to do is have to pay those funds back. So the other thing that I wanted to show you here as we're talking through, and as I mentioned, there are lots and lots and lots of funding areas outside of just that state local recovery fund. That's just one. The state local recovery fund, as you can see here from this chart, is just one, and I joke, but truly small billion-dollar piece to the American Rescue Plan. You see another $47.7 billion in competitive funds, $436 billion in formula grants going to states, $165.7 in additional formula grants going to public authorities and quasi-public nonprofits. So there's a lot of money beyond your direct allocations that you need to consider. And I want to run through those again very, very briefly. One thing to pay close attention to is this $10 billion that's going to a capital project fund that will be administered by the state. Each state is guaranteed $100 million. I believe the estimate for North Carolina is roughly $500 million that they can be expecting for this fund. And this is meant to address, emergency capital projects that directly enable work, education, health monitoring, and other things of the likes. But they also, in this provision, added water, sewer, and put an emphasis on broadband. So clearly there's a lot going on in the water, sewer, and broadband world, and we haven't even gotten to the infrastructure plan. But that's going to be something the state's going to have to announce how they plan to administer those funds. And so we'll be on the lookout for that, and we'll be getting that information to Lynn as it comes available, so that you can be looking at it. The other thing that you can see from this list of examples, and this is, again, just a small list, but they're using existing channels like EPA, EDA, the FEMA money. The FEMA money is 100%. They've waived the local match for that, so that's important to note. That amount of money going to EDA, the Economic Development Administration, I want to point that out. The normal annual appropriation for EDA is $300 million. In this bill alone, they're getting, in addition to their regular $300 million for FY21, they're getting another $3 billion. So this is just enormous amounts of money. The money that is going to EDA, there's also 25% of that carved out for travel and tourism. So they're writing a whole new set of criteria and guidance to learn how to get those funds for the travel and tourism industry. And then I want to call out this Emergency Connectivity Fund, because that's actually specifically for schools and libraries to create hotspots, internet service, computers, anything that helps with the connectivity for students and communities. Because as we saw with the pandemic, of course, get a little bit of feedback there. It'll stop. Okay. Is everybody? Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. I just, with that feedback, I wanted to make sure it didn't mess up. So going to, again, not all inclusive. I'm giving y'all a very, very small set of examples of the types of funding, but you see here the $1.25 billion for the shuttered operated venues. That anybody who might have been looking into that and saw that their portal went down because of the so much interest, they had technical difficulties. That's now opened again. That opened up on Monday. And those are things for live venue operators or the promoters of those live venues, theatrical productions, live performing arts, museum operators, even down to talent representatives. So that's a really broad category as well. And then you've got, in a lot of these, there's like shuttered operator venue or grants. You have others that are a combination of competitive grants and some formula dollars. So in the case of the National Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for the Humanities, just to give you an example, in both of those categories, 60% of that money is going to go out in the competitive grants process. 40% is going to regional art organizations and NEH affiliates under each category. So again, some of it's going to go by formula to existing agencies to help distribute. So those may be sub-grants that they plan to do, and then the rest will be on a federal competitive basis. So, all of this to say, and then again, you've got assistance to firefighters. Again, that's $300 million above what they're already getting. That's specifically for the AFG and the SAFER program. AFG being the equipment piece of it, and SAFER being the hiring part of firefighter assistance. So all of this to say is really, honestly, there is no better time to be paying really close attention to what's coming from Washington and in the competitive grants process in particular, because as a result of ARP, there's just an enormous amount of money that's going out through these competitive grants, and you don't want to miss any of it, so you have to pay attention. Very quickly, a way to get organized. Treasury has already recommended that you make sure that your SAMs and your DUNS numbers, which are two mechanisms for applying for competitive grants on the federal level, make sure that those are current and that your authorized user is also current, that it's not somebody that's maybe left your community. So you need to double check on those. And some of those changes can take weeks to make, so they're recommending that you get on that right away. And then also other documents you want to have in order are your banking. The routing numbers for the banking institution you plan to use, because again, these funds are going to go from Treasury directly electronically into your account. So you're going to need to have that information available to give Treasury when you log in to say, yes, I accept these funds, and so that they can make the transfer. One of the things that we're hearing a lot is, of course, they want you to assess your community needs. They want you to seek public input, but they also, especially for smaller communities that are getting, lower amounts of money, but this applies to larger communities as well. They really want everyone to look for regional opportunities. They're highly, encouraging folks to think creatively about how do you pull your dollars together in order to have an even bigger impact across your, across your region, and not think so much just about what you need within your own community. So, or it may be that you split your funds. You have some that you do directly for your community and others that you put into a pool, with some of your neighboring communities to do some really big things. So I encourage you to think regionally, and I will say that that's true for competitive grants as well. More and more, of course, anything you're going to want, Washington wants the biggest bang for the buck. So the more that you can put your money together when you're applying for federal grants and a lot of those programs I just mentioned, again, I think you're going to have the leg up. You're going to have additional points, if you will, if you can look at, opportunities to approach it from a regional perspective. I just mentioned all the different funding sources. So align your priorities with the available resources, not just your direct allocation, but other resources that I've shown you that are available, and look to spend grants first. Use your ARP money for those things where there isn't something existing in a grant that you could do the same thing with. You should really try to avoid things. Remember, this is a one-shot kind of deal, so you don't want to get into something that you can't sustain on your own. So looking at something, too big or too new that is going to leave you with a big bill to have to carry going forward is probably not a good idea. In the area of social and racial equity, they also really want that to be a big part of this. And I will also say that that is true. Climate action, social and racial equity are the biggest focus areas for every competitive grant. Even now, they're taking the FY21 competitive grants and rewriting them. We just saw that with the big transportation, formerly known as BUILD, is now called RAISE, Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. So they're putting it in the names, they're putting it in the requirements. It's something you really have to focus on. Keeping good records is essential for the reasons I mentioned earlier. For your compliance reporting, you don't want to have to pay it back. And they're asking everybody to really, keep track of the good things that are happening in your community. They want you to report back to agencies with your stories. They want to be able to advertise how this money is making a difference. So they're asking folks to please report back, let folks know, what you've done and the difference that, that it has made to your community. I'm going to wrap this up very quickly because I know I'm running out of time. You have lots and lots and lots of tools. National League of Cities is doing a great job. So is the League of Municipalities, the counties, commissioners, and the State Association, U.S. Conference of Mayors. White House Intergovernmental has a call literally every week. I think they're Thursdays at 4, if I recall. And they have a call every week that talks about what they're working on, and they'll certainly be talking about this out of the Treasury once the Treasury guidance comes in. Treasury, you can sign up to get notices from Treasury directly. So if you want to make sure that you're not missing any frequently asked questions or things once the guidance comes out, and they have set up specifically an Office of Recovery to help the local governments, the state and local governments with the distribution of funds and with answering questions. So they have an office dedicated to this alone. This is a little bit hard to see. Let me back up 1 second. I want everybody to make sure, and you'll get a copy of the slides, that you use this link. This is by far, in my opinion, and I think I've looked at about 50 different summaries of the American Rescue Plan. This is by far the best one I've seen. It was put together at the direction of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, but it applies to all local governments. And just one page of it in this big report, it's like 70 pages. As you'll see here, it tells you what the funding program is, how it can be used, how much is available, who can apply, and the expiration dates. I mentioned earlier, expiration dates vary depending on the program. This is just one page from that report. And it does this in a tremendous way, and for every program within the ARP. So I highly recommend that you download and you assign someone in your community to read it, and to read it again, and to read it again, and to highlight everything you want to go for. So quick notation, I've talked about Biden's plan for Build Back Better that he campaigned on. There's 3 components to that. The first part of that plan was the rescue and getting on the road to recovery. They call it Rescue, Recovery, and Rebuild the Country. And so there's a 3-part plan. The first one being American Rescue. The second one being the American Jobs Plan, or what everybody is calling the infrastructure package. This is right now, according from the White House outline, it's not full legislation yet, but the outline provided by the White House is $2.25 trillion. It would be paid for with an increase in corporate taxes. That's causing a lot of heartburn for the Republican side of the aisle, and so they've actually introduced another plan, what they call, a compromise, and for $600 billion. And depending on who you talk to, that's either serious or not serious, but they're trying to negotiate, a very large infrastructure plan, with infrastructure now being defined beyond your typical transportation and water, but including other things like affordable housing, broadband, clean energy, even schools. And so there's a lot more to it than what we would think of in a normal infrastructure package. And then now, today, it was released. The president will cover it in his first address to a joint Congress. This evening, he will outline his American Families Plan. This is the third package of that agenda to Build Back Better. And within that, you have, free childcare, paid family medical leave, free universal pre-K, free community college, any number of things. They consider this to be human infrastructure, investing in the human element. And so that's another package that'll be moving through. That also is expected to be in the $2 trillion range. So, and that would be paid for on taxes to the wealthy is the plan that the White House has put forward for that. You also simultaneously have FY22 appropriations moving through the process right now. That's where all the normal programs get funded and on a regular annual basis outside of these other plans. And within that, they've had a process come back into play called community project funding. And that is formerly known as earmarks. That's been underway for the last couple of weeks. That the deadline is this week for those projects. So that provides yet another opportunity. And within FY22 appropriations, they'll again fund all these grants that they do on an annual basis. So that is a final thing I'll mention is, in case you're wondering, well, how are they going to get all of these plans through, especially if they have opposition from the budget hawks in terms of spending. They are able to use the budget reconciliation process, which they use to pass the American Rescue Plan. They can use that reconciliation process 2 more times. The Senate parliamentarian did approve it. So they'll be able, with a simple majority, to pass these other 2 packages if they're able to keep the Democratic caucus together and block vote and not lose any of the votes. Even though the margins are narrow, they don't have to have that 60 vote threshold. They can do it with a simple majority. So that is, again, a lot of information. But I'm happy to pause and answer questions for whatever time you have available to do so. And beyond that, I'm happy to take questions later if folks want to send them in to us electronically or through Lynn or however you'd like to do it, Ron, and I'd be happy to circle back around to folks and answer questions even after this evening.
Thank you very much, Leslie. And I'll turn it over to anyone who has a question. And there may be some chats that we will have. Alina will work on those chats as well. So is there any questions at this point?
Just we're getting this presentation, I heard. Is that correct? You're going to email that to us?
Yep. So we're going to email out Leslie's presentation as well as all the links she mentioned. And I will just add, I actually forgot to mention this prior to Leslie's presentation, but we're holding 2 sessions for your managers in the next week or 2 to have all of them having these same conversations. Leslie's already presented to them as well. So we're doing everything we can just to make sure everyone has all of the information. There's a lot. So, make sure that your manager is involved in all the conversations that we're hosting so that they get all the information. Steve? Got your hand raised.
Yeah. And maybe you've already addressed this, but my question is, so you went through a lot of really exciting funding, like business recovery vitalization for businesses, small businesses. There's a list I've seen somewhere of the actual dollar amount that's coming to the cities. So what is the process? What should the process be from our perspective? Are the managements of the towns working to identify what the requirements are and how that money is spent? Because I haven't gotten any briefing from our municipality on, and I think our number is like 8.5 million because I just got a spreadsheet I'm reading off of. So what's the process like?
So I want to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly. You're saying, like, what's the process internally for you all to decide how to spend those funds? Or are you saying what is the process for you to get it from the Treasury?
Yeah, I guess a two-part question. So right now, like, you know, for example, Morrisville, I think has, based on what I'm seeing from the American Rescue Plan, $8 million that could be coming into Morrisville. So how, does that check come directly from the Treasury to the town? And after it does, what, you know, what are there any limits on what we can use it for? Or is it relatively broad that we will have the discretion as a local municipality to use that money in these different categories?
Okay, so communities under 50,000,
yes.
The money goes through the state. Okay.
Okay.
So the money has to go through the state for under 50,000. Those over 50,000 get the funds directly into their account. In terms of uses, as long as it fits within those four categories of eligibility, you're okay. But again, people are thinking really creatively. Those categories are meant to be very broad and very inclusive. And so in terms of how you spend those dollars, those are decisions that are made by your local government or whatever process they set up internally for getting those dollars out. And then you have to report back in terms of reporting and compliance to Treasury to make sure, you know, that you've done it correctly. But it's intended to be very flexible. The guidance, which I see now in the chat that I finished going through my presentation, Ron was apparently able to catch the White House call today. I had a conflict and couldn't make it, but it sounds like they've indicated that literally any day now this guidance will come out. I am recommending to everyone that you not commit to anything. Do not spend a dime or even verbally commit to spending money until that guidance is out. There will be a lot more information in that guidance.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's been a very informative presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Ron, while you're online, I don't know if you have anything else to add or say. I know, thank you for monitoring the chat. Is there anything you want to add that I might have left out?
No, I'll just say, in some of the previous calls that we've had with folks, officials from the Department of Treasury, they said the way they plan to set these, the guidance up is that it will be as flexible as possible. You know, of course, still staying within the guardrails that Leslie mentioned before. The other thing, too, is they don't foresee a situation where they just issue the guidance and that's it. They plan to have a number of series of different series of frequently asked questions, because this is a massive bill with many, many parts that even folks at the White House are still learning about. So they know that this is going to be a process in terms of the flexibility needed, what you can do with it and what you can't. But I will reiterate what Leslie just said. I would wait until I see the guidance in writing before committing to certain things that you're unsure about, and relative to whether they meet the tests that we know about in terms of what you will be able to use the funds for just at this point. So just a little bit more patience. We should see guidance. We were told today, any day now. So who knows, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, but it has to come soon because we're within that getting close to the 60-day disbursement for the first tranche of funding. Thanks, Leslie.
I see that Heidi Carter had a question about indirect relief. I will say that, yes, I don't think it has to be exactly like buying face masks and equipment and things of that nature like the CARES Act did. This is far more broad. This is much more flexible. So I think that indirect relief, as long as you can show that economic impact as a result of needing to recover from COVID, I think you'll probably find that broader indirect relief will be allowed. But again, the guidance will and they'll have a place where you can post questions. They do now, and they will after the guidance.
Leslie, in Johnston County, we have a significant amount of flooding, either flash floods or hurricane related, and so drainage is a big issue. It appears from what you pointed out that there's going to be additional FEMA money as well as local money could be applied in that direction.
Yes, sir, and I want to give Ron a chance to, Ron is my water guy. He knows more about water than I do. But I will say this, that FEMA money, that you really need to take a close look at that, because that is, again, that local match that's typically required has been waived. So that emergency disaster aid is 100%. and how that overlaps with what's already gone through the emergency system for hurricane relief is probably a question we would have to investigate. But there is an enormous amount of funding to address things like flooding issues in the water and sewer category. Ron, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say too the great opportunity that exists with this is the state will get that, the $10 billion that's going their way. And I think what we need to watch for too, I would advise you, is to see how they plan to deploy those funds, because they have to come up with some kind of system to pass those monies out too. So remember that capital fund that they're going to get that's also availability for water and sewer projects too. And I think when they wrote this bill, there was the forethought of infrastructure. And I think, again, that's why you see those things. But I would look at, the things that are in the bill, the direct relief, but then, as Leslie said, the various agencies that are going to get it, FEMA, EPA getting money, and then look at the state capital fund through the ARP as well. So I would look at all those as possible sources for funding your projects.
They are hearing loud and clear all of the stormwater needs. I mean, they're putting a lot of emphasis in those categories in a way that I haven't seen them do before, outside of a regular, infrastructure bill.
I don't know if
Any
this
other
is.
questions?
I got
Oh,
one.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just kind of want to throw a real world situation in, because I feel like nothing fits neatly in those categories that I could think of for us. But we had a private library that went in our community that went belly up through COVID, and we've had to take it over. A totally unexpected thing that's going to be like a $6 million surprise. And I don't see it fitting in that category, but it's kind of COVID related. Those are the type, I know you got to wait for guidance, but I'm just saying, is that a stretch, or is that, you think that could possibly fit into this?
No, I think that falls under that negative impact category, the very first one, in terms of that, again, is very broad. But I would also encourage you, when you get the slides too, and to look at, and we can, again, help with links that you need, but keep in mind that there's an additional $200 million for the Institute of Museum and Library Services related to COVID recovery. And so that could probably be yet another category. And then on top of that, you've got the connectivity fund, the emergency connectivity fund for schools and libraries. So there's two more categories of funding beyond your direct allocation under the state local recovery fund that I think you could use for those purposes.
Okay, I just thought that question would be helpful for other people too. Thank you.
Sure thing.
And Leslie, Don Rains again. One other question. We're looking at our community building is out of date. We're going to be putting a library in the community building, as well as looking at USDA rural development funds that we've got some commitment for. But could any of this money be applied in that direction?
That's an interesting question, and I don't know that I have the full answer to that in terms of the new construction of the library within your facility. But would you do me a favor and shoot that over in an email to me, and that'll kind of trigger a reminder to me tomorrow? I'm happy to look into it.
Will do. Elaine, is there any more chat?
Nope, nothing more in the chat. And I'll just say, I think we're at time, but if you have other questions for Leslie, please feel free to either reach out to her directly. Her information's on the slide, or email myself, and I'll connect her to that question. So
thank you very much.
And if the group will, oh, good, I'm glad. And if the group will have thank you for bearing with me through those technical difficulties in the beginning. I really appreciate your patience with me on that. And if the group will have us, we'll be happy to come back after guidance is out and see if we can answer more questions at that time.
Well, this was very valuable. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Okay, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Lee, who is going to do a budget presentation for the 2022 budget. And I will remind you that this is being videotaped, and then we'll have a public hearing after that presentation. and I'm gonna move to another room to get the shadow off of my face. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. It's my pleasure to present the recommended budget and work plan for next fiscal year, starting July 1st of 2021 and running through June the 30th of 2022. And Elena, I think, is driving, so if you go to the next slide. So just a couple things real quickly. And I like to say this at the beginning of every budget presentation, that although Triangle J is a local government and we certainly operate as such and report to the local government commission, the way that we have to budget with federal grants and state grants and all sorts of different programs is quite a bit different than when you see your local government budgets. So rather than sort of budgeting in departments, we budget according to specific programs. Then we also have a indirect budget that helps to fund our overhead, and we'll talk about that more as we get into the presentation. But I just think that's important, as I know all of you are starting your budget processes. It's a little bit different on the COG side, so just I would ask to put your COG budgeting hat on for the next few minutes, and it's a little different than local government budgeting. But the process is very similar. And so the budget process from now until the budget is adopted by this board is on the 15th of April. I sent the recommended budget to the board, alternates, the managers and staff. That's a requirement by TJ COG bylaws that the budget is developed and sent out by the 15th of April. And you see the rest of the dates on your screen. Tonight we're doing the presentation. You also are doing your budget public hearing, which is required by state law. We have advertised that, and due to the virtual meeting, that public hearing will remain open for 24 hours to allow individuals to comment by email. We'll be meeting with the officers of the COG board on the 5th of May to talk about any feedback from the budget. And then on the 28th of May, you will have the budget resolution at your meeting to consider for adoption, which obviously has to be done by July 1st in order for us to continue to operate. Next slide. So our recommended budget is actually up quite a bit from the current year, about 10%. The recommended budget is $18.4 million. The adopted budget for this year was about 16.7. And next slide. Really, the majority of that increase, we were talking about COVID-related funding. The majority of that increase is really due to COVID-related funding and pass-through funds for the Area Agency on Aging that are coming to the AAA and then back out to the counties and to our partners to assist with COVID-related issues. So that is the majority of the increase. We're going to talk a little bit about our member assessments. Member assessments or member dues are the most critical and most appreciated funding that we get at the COG. Without the member dues, we would not be in business. And I talk about it almost like an inverted pyramid. I talk about that quite often, that member dues are a small amount of our funding, but without the member dues, we would not be able to do anything else. So we are so appreciative of the dues that our members pay. The member due structure is 39 cents per capita, up to 150,000 population. And then for those communities that are above 150,000, the dues go down to 20 cents. And most of those dues are then dedicated to our development and infrastructure efforts. The good news is no changes are recommended to the member assessment. No increase is recommended. Those rates have remained unchanged since 1996, 1997. So we've had a very stable member dues rate for many, many years. And why does that occur? One, when we get more member governments and using our services and more funding from the state and federal government, we have to rely less on our member dues. And also, we've gained 9 new members since 2017. So that has certainly allowed us to increase increase the revenue that we get as well. And we appreciate all of our members, but certainly appreciate the 9 new members we've gained in the last few years. Next slide. So what do member assessments do? The number on the right-hand side, that's the amount of money that we get for member assessments, $680,000. It's really the only funding that we have that is very, very flexible. So we use that funding to really drive toward our priorities, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But specifically, member dues really go to 3 main areas. One, they are used as match for those funding sources that require a match. We'll talk about one specifically in a few minutes, but several of our projects, 4 specifically, require a local match in order for us to draw those funds down. Member dues is the only place that we have to put aside money for a rainy day or for contingency. So the member dues are used for contingency. And then, of course, we use a portion of member dues for salaries for a number of our staff. And it's not just the salary, it's the fringe cost and it's the indirect cost for 14 of our COG staff members that are working on projects throughout our focus areas. So in terms of percentage, the member dues is about 3.7% of the total budget. And when you take away our pass-through dollars, it's about 8.4% of the budget without the pass-through. So compared to last year was 3.9 and 12.6%. So small amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but critical in terms of operating the organization. Next slide. And so talking just a little bit about leveraging member dues, these are the 4 projects that require a match: our Clean Fuels Alternative Transportation Project, our Safe Routes to School Project, our Development and Infrastructure Partnership, and the work that we do to support metropolitan transportation issues. That's the work that we do with the 2 MPOs in Go Triangle. Those projects in total require about $94,000 in our member assessment as match, about 13 or almost 14%. But what that does is it leverages an additional $470,000 in revenues for these projects. So for every dollar of dues spent for these projects, we're getting another $4.99 into the organization to support you and to support these 4 projects. Next slide. I want to focus in on our work with the metropolitan planning organizations and Go Triangle, our metropolitan transportation work. Very important, I know, to the region. We have a great relationship with those organizations, and they have been very generous to us over the years. So that's a good news and a bad news thing. The good news is that we love supporting transportation and our partners and the local governments. The unfortunate part about that is when we get more money from the MPOs and Go Triangle, we have to put a 20% match toward those funds. So more money means more member assessment, and when member assessment doesn't change in terms of what we're charging, a greater percentage is going toward those projects, which squeezes other projects sometimes. So this is just a quick comparison. A couple fiscal years ago, we were using about 3.3% of the total member assessment toward our work in metropolitan transportation. Because of their good work and the MPOs and Go Triangle trusting us more, we're now getting close to $400,000 in project dollars from those organizations. But that is requiring close to 9% of the member assessment to match. So what we're doing this year is asking our local government partners to put a little bit more money into our metropolitan planning organization efforts. Right now, we're asking $3,000 from each of our 5 municipal and county partners on the MPO work. We've asked them to consider going up to $6,000 to help offset that cost. And as a comparison on our work with the rural planning organization, each of those jurisdictions pay $9,000. So our plan is to go to $6,000 hopefully next year, and then the year after that to go to $9,000, so that we equal the contribution for our RPO work. Next slide. So the organization, through some reorganization and the beginning of some strategic planning, these are the 3 overarching organizational priorities that we have for any work that we do. We're focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, focused on data and analytics, and focused on serving our local government members. And here are a couple, 3 examples of how this budget addresses those organizational priorities. This year, the recommended budget's going to fund 5% of one of our employees' salary to focus exclusively on DEI initiatives. That'll include strengthening our relationship with the Government Alliance for Race and Equity, and assisting me in working with the local government managers on a year-long equity initiative. Would love to put more money into that, and hopefully in the next few years we can, but 5% is more than we were doing this year. So I'm proud that we were able to find some money to do that. With data and analytics, we actually have a new position in the budget, a data strategy coordinator. Many of the larger metropolitan regional councils across the country have very robust regional data centers, and we hope to begin to launch a regional data center initiative here at Triangle J with the addition of a data strategy coordinator. Serving our members, really excited about some new initiatives, including the launching of the Triangle Area Solid Waste Consortium. I'll talk about that a little more in a second. We're also going to be providing direct planning services to 2 of our member governments. And we're also investigating opportunities around code enforcement. Next slide. And then here are our strategic focus areas. So organizationally, we're all focused on 3 important things, but then our work is focused into 7 specific topical areas: aging and human services, strategy and innovation, community and economic development, technical assistance, housing, transportation, and natural resources and resiliency. And I'll quickly touch on each of those and some things in the budget that we'll be doing next year. Next slide. So aging and human services is a continued focus both on the Older Americans Act, in supporting our subrecipients and local agencies, and of course, advocating for the rights of older adults through our long-term care ombudsman program and the residents in those long-term care facilities, and then obviously assisting those partners in the network of information for older adults. Next slide. And then, as you can guess, pandemic recovery will remain a key driver of the work for all of us, but particularly the Area Agency on Aging. I talked about the additional funding that's coming through the agency due to the CARES Act and other COVID-related items. I think there are going to be some additional things that the AAA is going to be asked to do. We just don't know the specifics of it. So the AAA has been hard at work on COVID-related items since March of last year and will continue to do so into next year. Next slide. And I apologize if you hear a crying baby. I think my 3-year-old's having an issue in his room next door, so it's catching me a little off guard, but I'll try to keep moving forward. Under community economic development, Leslie mentioned the U.S. Economic Development Agency, and of course we support USEDA as that local on-the-ground organization that administers the Economic Development District, and we'll be continuing to build and coordinate and seek additional funding through our comprehensive economic development strategy in the coming year. Some specific things that we're going to do, which is on the next slide, are our foreign trade zone. Really excited about this. We've been talking to the Economic Development Partnership in North Carolina about focusing some of our work on getting out into our communities and making companies in the region more aware of the international opportunities that are available and the tremendous amount of funding that's available at the state level for companies that want to compete more in the international markets. So we're going to couple that with our foreign trade zone work, and the employee is going to be doing work both on FTZ and working with the EDP&C on some international focuses. Historic preservation, we're going to be administering next year about $2.2 million in historic preservation grant funding to rehabilitate 3 historical structures across the region. One of those is in Moore County, one is the Lee County Historic Courthouse, and then one is in Johnston County in Princeton. And we're excited about helping to do that work. And then we are continuing to coordinate and facilitate an amount of US EDA CARES Act funding, where we're doing a variety of things to support our local governments. Next slide. Talk about housing a little bit. This program, as you know, has been growing very quickly, and we'll continue to partner with stakeholders and provide education, and also doing more and more administering of critical programs on behalf of our member governments. Next slide. So a few examples of some projects for next year. We're going to be continuing to expand our work in supporting our member governments with home repair. You see here about $380,000 in rehab programs for Chatham and Wake. Those are new counties that we're supporting, which we're very thankful for. We'll continue our work in Durham, Harnett, Lee, and Orange County. And we'll also, these rehab programs will provide over $1 million for housing repair for low and moderate income individuals. Energy efficiency, we'll be working on a CARES Act grant that'll support Durham and Wake low-income homeowners to reduce their energy costs. And a new opportunity, we're going to be working with the town of Cary to help administer a CDBG program around affordable housing activities during the next year. So we're excited about existing and new opportunities in our housing focus area. Next slide. Natural resources and resiliency. So natural resources and resiliency are things like our water resources program, our work on resiliency, and I'll talk a little bit about a new initiative as well. So planning, like traditional programs like our Clean Water Education Partnership, and also leveraging frameworks and partnerships we already have, like the Jordan Lake One Water Initiative. So some specifics is this solid waste consortium. I'm really excited about this. We started working with 8 communities about a year ago. These 8 communities were interested in working more closely together on solid waste issues, in particular recycling. They wanted to possibly do some joint requests for proposals and work together to make sure that they were getting the best deal that they could for recycling contracts, and wanted to just coordinate more tightly on solid waste issues. So we've been meeting for about a year, like I said, working out the details, and I'm very proud to announce that memorandums of agreement are starting to come back from those local governments, and they are now also wanting to invite additional local governments into the consortium. There is a cost to participate because we are going to be dedicating specific staff time to helping staff and do research and help the consortium move forward. So 1/3 of our new Economic Development Planner 2 position will be devoted to managing and staffing our new solid waste consortium. So very excited about that. And we'll continue to do things like jointly administer our Raleigh watershed and Durham water supply protection programs, where we help those local governments work with nonprofits to buy and secure pieces of property to in the watershed to help preserve water quality. Next slide. Strategy and innovation is another focus area for us. This is a growing area. More and more local governments are wanting to work together on providing trainings and collaborate and partner together on strategic planning and innovation. So we're providing that mechanism for folks to come together. And a couple things for next year. Next slide. We'll continue to build on our very successful Innovation Academy. As a reminder, this fiscal year, we held 2 cohorts on our Innovation Academy and had over 50 participants from 22 of our member governments. We're going to launch additional cohorts during next fiscal year. And we'll talk about this. I think it's the next item, but we're going to be working on another Sandbox challenge. We have asked for individuals or organizations to submit their challenges around COVID relief. And so supporting that work will be a priority for next year. Next slide. And then technical assistance, providing our member governments with assistance that they need. That's really a hallmark of any regional council, and it's something that we're very proud of, whether that's in human resources management or strategy, communications and engagement, running assessment centers or doing recruitments or governing board retreats, doing planning and data work. We're just helping with day-to-day operations, and we'll talk a little bit about a specific example around finance on the next slide. So several projects to highlight around technical assistance. You may or may not know that we have run a drug and alcohol testing program for many, many years. And I'm very proud to say that we are going to be re-engineering that program and actually outsourcing it more than we ever have. And the good news with that is that we're going to be able to pass along about a 30 to 40% savings to the local governments that participate in the drug and alcohol testing program as a result of doing this. We will have less dedicated time of our own staff working on the program, but will serve more as the convener in the portal for local governments to come in and realize the savings of working together. So very excited to be able to pass along those savings to our local government members. Talked a little bit about code enforcement. We had a very good conversation with several local governments a few days ago that are interested in working more closely together on code enforcement issues, and several of them are actually interested in maybe exploring a cost-sharing arrangement where the COG would maybe hire 1 or 2 code enforcement officials and then serve individual local governments through that cost share arrangement. And then finally, we have been working in partnership with the Mid-Carolina COG to provide financial assistance to the town of Spring Lake. We have also been asked by the town of Cameron to provide a cost estimate to provide finance assistance to them. This is an extremely important opportunity for us. It's an emerging issue. And I think there was actually an article just today about the local government commission having to take over a town, I believe in the southeastern part of the state, and maybe even taking their charter away. I think the COG is in perfect position to be able to help with that. We've had conversations about doing more of this with the County Commissioners Association, the League of Municipalities, the School of Government, and the Local Government Commission, and have had very, very positive response from all of those organizations about the capabilities and the opportunity to help our local governments with this important issue. Next slide. Transportation, continue to support on long-term, large-scale, community-specific plans, and making sure that we connect those plans to economic development, sustainability, and housing. You can see our population growth, and there have been several significant announcements in the last few weeks where we all know that that growth will continue to increase. And we're going to be great opportunities, but certainly they also provide challenges to infrastructure and other things within the region. Next slide. So a few noteworthy projects for next year. A lot of work in clean fuels and transit. We're going to be serving as the lead for a Drive Electric grant that will encourage electric vehicle use and infrastructure development. I think there could be additional opportunities around electric vehicles and clean energy with the infrastructure programs that are coming down from the federal level. So we're continuing to look for those opportunities. And we have as I mentioned earlier, a long-standing partnership with the MPOs, and we'll continue to work with them on important things like performance measures and a new intelligence transportation system. And I think the addition of our data strategy position will help strengthen these partnerships with the MPO. And we'll continue to work with the Triangle Area RPO on the Lee County Transportation Plan, the Pittsboro Transportation Plan, and the Moore County Land Use Forecasting Model. Next slide. So new positions. There are quite a few new positions this year. Some of these are due to some positions coming back from a couple years ago. Some of these are due to the reorganization, and some are just really because of new opportunities. I talked about the data strategy coordinator. We'll be also in the recommended budget, there's an administrative support specialist that will fill the role of the clerk to the board and provide the administrative support for the organization. I mentioned the economic development planner. This individual will manage the foreign trade zone as well as the new solid waste consortium. Next slide. As you know, our housing program continues to grow. We're going to be able to convert one of our AmeriCorps interns into a full-time position, a planning assistant, because of the increased work in our housing program. We're going to rehire a planner 2 that's been vacant for about 1.5 years in our transportation focus area. Some of you may have heard of the NC LEAD program with the School of Government. These are hiring very talented individuals out of college for entry-level opportunities in local governments. We're partnering with the School of Government to hire a LEAD fellow to provide planning assistance to the towns of Princeton and Pine Level. So we're very excited about that. And we're also going to be hiring a part-time graduate fellow to support some of our development and infrastructure efforts. We do have a vacant administration officer position, which I plan to not fill going forward. Next slide. Then lastly, last couple slides, indirect. So as a COG with federal grants and a federally recognized indirect rate, we have to be very careful what we use federal grants for to pay for our overhead, our administrative activities, our HR activities, our audit, and our legal costs. And so what we do is we take all the programs and we try to distribute that cost evenly across all programs. So we figure out what the cost of our overhead is, and then we figure out what the salary and the fringe costs are for each of the programs, and we figure out a percentage to charge each of those programs so that they can equitably contribute to the overhead costs of the organization. We've been able to drive that indirect rate down consistently year after year. And that's, again, because of additional revenues, new opportunities. And what that means is less of a burden from each of the programs on paying the overhead because we have more programs and more revenues coming in. So our indirect rate for next year is set at 38.61%. And you can see how that rate's gone down over the last several years. Next slide. All right, lastly, our contingency is budgeted at about $48,000. That is funding, that is money that's set aside for any sort of unknown issues or new opportunities that may arise during the budget year. Next. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions from any board members. And also, just a reminder, we need to conduct the public hearing. Thank you.
Because of time, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing for comments. And then at this time, any delegate can ask questions if there's no public comment. So if there is a member of the public who has a comment, the public hearing is now open, and it will remain open for 24 hours by email or other means of communication, and will be closed Friday morning. So is there a comment from the public?
We have not received any comments at this time.
Very well. We'll keep the public comments open for a few more minutes. And is there any board member who now wants to ask questions pertaining to the 22 budget? There's one hand that's been raised. Randy?
Oh, I just wanted to ask, it's not really about the budgeting, but I wanted to know if you could identify for us who is in the solid waste consortium at this time.
Sure, yes, ma'am. So not all of these jurisdictions have actually signed their agreement, but they've been participating. Alamance County, which is outside of our region, but they've been at the table. Orange County, Durham County, City of Durham, City of Raleigh, Wake County, Town of Cary, Chatham County, and we've had some interest in recent weeks from Sanford and Holly Springs, but we also have not really been advertising it a lot yet either. So.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
There's one other person that's raised their hand if they're ready to ask the question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm on the same wavelength as the previous question. Is this scalable to our? Do you think it's possible that, I'm asking a theoretical question, that this solid waste project, if it's successful, it could stretch all the way down to Moore County, or would it be a separate thing? If you're talking to Lee, I mean, it seems like one small leap, and we're having a real problem. We're having a lot of people not recycling glass in Moore County since the massive change in glass recycling. So.
Yes, sir. I think there's opportunities across the whole region. So the group the initial group that I mentioned was a group that was sort of already meeting, and we were invited into their meeting, and they wanted to try to see if they could strike an agreement among themselves before they started really opening this up. So, but now that they're very open to additional partners. So we'd love to talk to any jurisdiction that might be interested.
Someone's got to start. My question was more, do you think it'd be multiple regional partnerships or maybe one? That was really my question.
Sure. No, I hear you. I think it could depend on MRF sheds, not to try to get too technical, but materials recycling facilities, right? So where are there logical MRF sheds? Could could drive where some of these coalitions start forming. But I think recycling is an issue we've heard across the region. So I think everybody is welcome. And then I think as we begin talking, some of those things will probably start revealing themselves through conversations and interest.
Do you think the scale of something like this, if everyone partnered, all of a sudden we can own a facility? Is that a crazy idea?
It's an idea that has been expressed by the consortium.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's crazy.
Okay, and that's all I had. I just want. It's very interesting. Thank you.
It is. Sure. Thank you. And I'll be just for the board's information. I mean, it's almost a continuum, right? I mean, there's been conversations about maybe we just learn from each other and collaborate, all the way to conversation and ideas. Could we maybe one day have a regional solid waste authority? So the ideas are all over the place, and I think formalizing something is the first step.
Someone's got to pioneer it. Thank them for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
A copy of the budget is on the website of Triangle J, and we will be meeting as the executive committee next week, and obviously we'll be voting in the May meeting. I know there may be other questions that we can sort of limit to one or two, so we can go on to the other items. If there is further questions, I'm sure Lee or is available to answer those.
Absolutely. I'm happy to answer them now, or if anybody wants to reach out individually.
Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and again, it will remain open for 24 hours by email or other forms of communication, and then Friday public comments will be reviewed. So next on our agenda is the selection of the 2021 Sandbox Challenge, and there's some great presentations, and I'll turn it back to Alina to review.
Thank you, Don. So I am really excited to share the 2021 Sandbox Challenge finalists with all of you tonight. I am going to just quickly, I know we definitely have some board members who were not with us when we conducted our last Sandbox Challenge, so I just want to quickly provide a little bit of background on what this initiative is and how it started. And then I will present, there's 3 finalists that we're going to be showing you tonight that were submitted by other organizations or local governments in the region. And then you will be voting as a body, a governing body. So the way we're going to do this, because voting digitally is quite complicated if we wanted to do it all at once, we're actually going to place a form in the chat, and we'll also email it out after the meeting. And everyone, both those who are on the meeting tonight and any other delegate, can also vote via form. So we'll be selecting it that way. So it'll be a little bit less immediate, but it will give everyone the opportunity to make sure that they've voted. So with that, the 2021 Sandbox Challenge is an initiative. This is our second round doing this call for challenges, is kind of how we framed it. The first one was started in 2018, and there's 3 kind of bullets on your screen that really outline why we started this effort. At the time, we were looking for ways to make sure that we understood these emerging issues. I think recycling, the conversation around solid waste, is a really great one because it's an example of something that came up in the last challenge. It didn't end up being our selected challenge, but it was a way for us to learn, several years ago what the biggest challenges were for our communities. And so we've done that again. This time, the 2021 Sandbox Challenge was more focused on COVID recovery. But it gives us an opportunity to do 3 things. So first, we crowdsourced from our network of stakeholders what they felt are the biggest challenges in our region. And you're going to hear those 3 of those, the finalists tonight. It'll then give us the opportunity to dedicate staff and resources to one of those. So the one that is selected, the opportunity is that TJ Cog will then focus for the next year on that specific topic. And then what we'll be doing with those resources is basically going through the process of identifying potential solutions to those challenges, bringing people to the table that might be important partners to have, and potentially piloting some solutions. And one thing that I will note, the previous Sandbox Challenge resulted in our regional recruitment partnership that many of your communities are a part of. So it really did result in some sort of a tangible outcome. So just a couple of, so the criteria for the submissions and then the process that we're going through, which we're obviously still in the process of. When we put out this call, there was really only 3 big criteria that we asked for the submissions. One, that it related to either economic stability, economic resiliency, and/or COVID recovery, which is a very big bucket, but we wanted to make it as broad as possible. 2, that it affects multiple communities. Obviously, TJCOG is at a regional scale, so we think it's important that we help with those challenges that one can't address on their own. And then 3, that it impacts the public sector. And that can either be impacted by the public sector decisions or actually has an impact on the public sector. And then in italics, I've added this 4th goal, which we really use to identify these 3 finalists. One thing that we didn't do for the previous Sandbox Challenge was make sure that it aligned with work that we already have underway. And I think this will be a really valuable addition to this process, that we are really focusing on some potential opportunities that build on things we're already doing and some goals we already have as an organization, so that we can kind of lend our expertise to these issues. In the blue box, you can see the process. So we put out a call for projects throughout mid-March and into April, from February to March. We selected finalists based on the criteria and announced those finalists throughout our network so that folks were aware. We've heard from some individual organizations and local governments who are interested in some of these challenges. Tonight, you're going to choose the finalist, and then we'll announce the winner next week. And we're planning, I believe, probably to start kind of pulling in stakeholders for whatever the challenge that is selected in probably June, so that we can really hit the ground running in the new fiscal year. So with that, I'm just going to really at a high level, I am not a subject matter expert at these challenges, and I think it is also important to not get too into the weeds with solutions because we don't really want to jump ahead. I'm going to talk through each of the 3 finalists, and then we will put the voting form in the chat box, and we can also take questions at that time if there's any questions. So the first one is supporting inclusive entrepreneurship, and this was actually submitted by the town of Carrboro, and you can see on your screen. I'll kind of try to explain it for those who are on the phone as well. Basically, a focus on ways that local governments can support more unique forms of entrepreneurship. And so the submission focused more specifically on things like pop-ups, food trucks, micro retail that maybe don't fit into traditional zoning or incentive structures. And so the town submitted it saying they really feel like they haven't been able to find any good examples of ways that governments are supporting these businesses that can be really important for inclusive entrepreneurship. So that is submission number 1. Submission number 2 is trying to build a resilient, regenerative food economy. And this was actually submitted by a nonprofit partner for our region, the Community Food Lab, who feels like we really have not found a way to have a comprehensive food system planning effort in our region. And Lee alluded to earlier, there's been a lot of big announcements that are going to lead to more growth that may result in more development, more loss of farms, more food insecurity without really a comprehensive strategy. And they felt like it was really important to have this be submitted to this specific challenge, call for challenges, because the regional scale approach is the best way to kind of pool resources and have both urban and rural at the table for the conversation. So that was number 2. And then number 3 is the challenge of building a circular building supply chain. I will explain that because I myself had to learn about it when we got the submission. So basically, this was submitted by Circular Triangle, which is also a nonprofit partner. They basically feel like our region needs to address the fact that we have a huge construction and building industry that does not divert from the landfill very much. And I think this goes back to the solid waste conversation, and also feels like this is something that the public sector needs to be at the table on, really is in charge of things like incentive structures, building ordinances, things like that. So it's really finding a way to make the supply chain more holistic and kind of circle back without creating as much waste in the region. So those are the 3 challenges. Quickly before we vote, we did want to just provide a little bit of information to help with voting in terms of how each of these relates to what TJCOG is already doing. And then I will take questions because I see some hands going up. And actually, Lindsay, if you want to jump in, feel free to on this slide as well. One thing that I did want to note that about why we're making sure that we tie this to some of our work that's already going on. One thing that's really helpful is that we have the comprehensive economic development strategy in place, which I know Lindsay has presented to this board before. And one thing that document does, it makes it easier for us to get funding from the EDA that ties to strategies in that document. And so one thing that's really, it's a great opportunity is that if we choose a challenge that, which all 3 of these in some way do align with our SEDS, there's a lot of opportunity for longevity of these issues and potential funding to support whatever we choose to do moving forward. So that's why we're really making sure that we focus on something that's in our wheelhouse, especially around our SEDS. I don't want to go too deep into, Lindsay, do you have anything you want to add to this slide, specifically with SEDS tie-in?
No, I was just going to, oh, sorry, a little kickback, but all 3 projects do directly, sorry, Elena, I'm going to mute you.
Yeah.
Okay, I was getting some kickback and I couldn't think. All 3 projects do directly relate to the comprehensive economic development strategy to some degree. Also, I know that the second project has the word resilient in it, but all 3 projects do obviously relate to economic resiliency as well. And so I just wanted to point that out. And I mean, I'll let Elena finish her presentation, but I think the point of this slide right here is just really identifying how each of the 3 projects separately relate to some of the work that we're conducting at TJCOG. So that's really all I have to add, Elena.
No, that's perfect. Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, and I will say, so I think I'll stop actually, because I think we've made our point about the tie to the SEDS. It looks like there's some hands. Matt Hughes, I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I was trying to use the chat feature and couldn't. But I was wondering, I was trying to orient myself during the presentation, and I realized that at the bottom of the slide was the submitter, or maybe the person or the group that pitched it. Who pitched the inclusive entrepreneurship one?
That was the town of Carborough.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't an organization. I work for an organization that's actually the work that we do. And so I wanted to make sure, there was any sort of conflict or anything by who proposed it, to, make sure I, avoided that. So thank you.
That makes sense. Kevin Drum, it looks like you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're all neat. The circular building supply chain, I see it butting heads with all the problems municipalities are having with the state not allowing us to manage development. We can't, there's legislation being passed, considered being passed, where we can't even manage buffers, tree buffers. So I could see that that's a bigger issue. That's like butting heads with exactly the state of North Carolina seems to be taking more and more control away from municipalities on development. So I kind of think that's the biggest issue. So I kind of like that third one for that reason, because we're starting to lose control of our local communities from constant state legislation that takes our control away. I hope, is everybody feeling that like I am down here in Pinehurst or not?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I just mentioned that third one is like kind of butts heads with that, which I like. And I think all of them have validity, but I wanted to bring that point up. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Are there any other comments on these 3 items or things that you want to share with the full board about either of the items or any of the items?
Yes, this is Wilma. I agree with Kevin. I think that all are good, but that third one is the one that I would say is very important at this time.
Thank you. And I don't want to cut the conversation off necessarily, but we do need to finish all the items on the agenda. So Elena, if you're going to be sending a link or email so that everyone will have opportunity to vote.
Correct. Thank you.
And Lindsay, you have a presentation on the Sarah Lynn Culvert Protection Project Resolution in Chatham County. So if you want to start that presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Raines. I just wanted to add, I did put the link to the Sandbox voting form in the chat already, but Elena will also send that out. So regarding my presentation tonight, yes, I'm here to gain support for a resolution that was actually included in the agenda packet. I'm going to describe the project a little bit. So Chatham County actually approached TJCOG and asked if we could help provide technical assistance and serve as the fiscal agent on behalf of one of their homeowners associations. It's located in an unincorporated area in Chatham County. And the reason being that to apply for this particular grant, it is the Water Resources Development Grant through DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality. To be the applicant and the fiscal agent, you do have to have designation of as a local government, which obviously an HOA does not have that. And Chatham County had to decline their services because of not having capacity, basically. So that's where we came into the picture. And Chatham County, again, had asked us to serve them as their member, but to also serve this homeowners association as the fiscal agent. So what is the project? The HOA is applying for funding again through DEQ for a culvert replacement and stream restoration project, which basically there's the HOA, I think they said 35 households in their HOA. And to get to and from the area, there's only this one entry point, and the culvert it's old. It's been fixed with a Band-Aid approach a couple of times, but to continue to be able to weather changing weather patterns and increased flooding, it clearly needs to be replaced. And so that's where the culvert replacement comes into play. And then the stream, just due to upstream development, it needs to be restored. And so that's the actual project. And then, excuse me, where we come into play is we would be the actual applicant, and the HOA has procured a separate engineer to write the application. But then if awarded, we would also administer the funds. And in the agenda packet, I believe there was a copy of what the MOA would look like between us and the HOA. And so for a little bit further clarification of our role in the project, you could reference that. But with that being said, I mean, that's the overview of the project and TJCOG's role. Again, just wanting to reiterate that the request came from Chatham County, so wanting to serve them, but as a member, but the HOA as well. So happy to answer any questions. And there was a copy of the resolution in the agenda packet.
For clarity, there is a fee that will be for that administrative services of, I think, 6%.
Yeah, it's 6% for the administrative services. Unfortunately, the grant does not allow indirect to be paid for out of grant funding. So we have an agreement with the HOA that using their separate general funds, they'll pay the indirect expense. And the total project is estimated at about 480,000 right now. And that is 200,000, which will be requested from DEQ. That's the max you can request. And then the rest will be the match from the HOA. TJ Cog is obviously not contributing anything to that.
Lindsay, is there a staff recommendation?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess just if you have any questions, happy to answer them, and then hoping that the board will sign the resolution or approve the resolution for Mayor Rain's signature.
Did I answer your question, Ronnie?
No, kind of indirectly. She said she was hoping we would approve it. I was just wondering from a staff perspective, is there a recommendation from Lee or the staff on whether we have the bandwidth and that type of thing to approve it?
Yeah, yes, sir. So this is Lee. Yes, we've got the bandwidth. Lindsay and her staff have capacity to do this, and we've talked a lot about this, and I feel very comfortable about moving forward. And as Lindsay said, there's no expenditure of COG funds for this. We're just basically doing this on behalf of Chatham County because they don't have capacity at this time.
Kevin, do you have a question, or is that from a prior?
That's from a prior. I don't have a question.
Okay. Okay. This is on the consent agenda. If there's no other questions at this point, we will move to the consent agenda, and I will turn it over to Emily Barnett for the Clean Water Education Partnership Memorandum for Raleigh and for our program.
Mayor Raines, Emily's not on the call tonight, so I will take that. This is a request that the board authorize the chair to sign the Clean Water Education Partnership Memorandum with the city of Raleigh. They've requested for this memorandum that the board authorize it, which we're certainly happy to do. But what it does is it also asks the board to authorize me to sign any future agreements. So that is that item, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions pertaining to this? It will probably expand not only for Raleigh, but other communities as we go through the education process. Okay. And the next item is the approval of the minutes, which is self-explanatory. But Elena, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Okay.
This is Heidi Carter. I have a correction to the minutes.
Okay.
It's a minor correction, but I was listed as absent, and I was present at that meeting.
Thank you for that correction. We will make that.
Okay. We'll just have that as
Thank
a friendly amendment and just noted a correction in the minutes. Okay. The next is approval of, the approval of the Sarah Lynn Culvert project resolution we've already discussed. Next, I'll turn it over to Judy Weller about budget amendments for last year quarterly financials.
Yeah, hi everyone. I usually not presenting, but I'll go ahead. Got caught off guard here, but that's okay. The item submitted here is our quarterly finances as of March 31st. And this is just to give the board a snapshot of what's our year-to-date expenditures and revenue look like. And we are in good standing. And also attached is a budget amendment just to keep us in compliance. We come to the board pretty often with these, occasionally during the year as we have changes in revenue streams, whether it's a grant, a new grant, or a reduction in a change in a contract. And so what I'm asking is for the board to approve this via consent agenda, both items.
These changes are basically just housekeeping.
Just housekeeping, exactly, correct, yes, nothing.
Okay. The next is approved procurement and conflict of interest and gift policies. And Judy, you did an outstanding job putting this together. I read through it in detail. It looks great.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, it's just another set of housekeeping, just keeping us in compliance.
Any questions on either one of these items to Judy? Hearing none. Is there any item on the consent agenda that anyone wants to take off of the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll have a, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes. Ronnie Kern, I'll make a motion to approve.
Kathleen Ferguson seconds.
There's been a motion to approve by Ronnie. It's been seconded by Kathleen. So we will do a roll call vote to approve the consent agenda.
All right, so just as a reminder, I'm going to say the community name, and then if the delegate is present, the delegate can say their name first, and if the alternate is present, they can follow the delegate with their name. Aberdeen?
Will Mullaney votes aye.
Anger?
Bob Smith, aye.
Apex?
Brett Gant, aye.
Archer Lodge? We can't hear you, Mark, but I see you. And actually, I need to make a quick amendment. The alternate does not vote. So only vote if your delegate is not present. That's a quick amendment to what I said earlier. Oh, go ahead, Mark. I think you're unmuted. Welcome back. Benson? Broadway? Cameron? Scarborough?
Randy Haven O'Donnell, aye.
Carthage? Perry?
Jennifer Robinson, aye.
Chapel Hill? Chatham County? Clayton? City of Durham?
Aye.
County?
Heidi Carter, aye.
Quaverina?
Larry Smith, aye.
Garner?
Ken Marshburn, aye.
Goldston? Hillsborough?
Kathleen Ferguson, aye.
Holly Springs?
Suncraft, aye.
Johnson County? Kenley? Nightdale?
Jessica Day, aye.
Thank you. Lee County?
Kirk Smith, yes.
Micro? Moore County? Morrisville?
Steve Rao, aye.
Orange County?
Sally Green, aye.
Level? Pinehurst,
Kevin Drum, aye.
Pittsburgh, Princeton,
Don Raines, aye.
Raleigh, Robbins, Rolesville,
Ronnie Kern, aye.
Sanford, Selma,
Byron McAllister, aye.
Tyler City, Smithfield,
Andy Moore, aye.
Southern Pines, Wake County,
Susan Evans, aye.
Forest,
Joe DeLoach, aye.
thank you. Wilson's Mills,
David McAllen, aye.
and Zebulon. All right, unanimous vote.
Okay, did Archer Lodge, did we get Archer Lodge's vote?
Let's try again. Archer Lodge, Mark, are you able to?
I'm trying my best. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
I got a thumbs up here.
Perfect, thank you.
I vote aye.
So it's, Elena's a unanimous vote, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for the participation. Next on the agenda is the Executive Director's Report. And Lee?
Thank you, sir. Just two quick items. Number one, I just wanted to reinforce the beginning of the meeting and the presentation on the American Rescue Plan. And we here at the COG are talking a lot about how we can be valuable to the member governments, but not duplicate. We know there's lots of information coming out. Elena mentioned the sessions that we'll be holding. We've invited the managers. We've also asked the managers to feel free to have others in the organization that they want involved in those discussions. So just a few things that we're thinking about. You know, could we be of help to member governments to help administer funds? Could we be of help perhaps to help write grants? We could certainly be a clearinghouse or a gathering point for what the funds are being used for to help communicate that to federal and state delegations. We also are going to be interested in hearing if there are thoughts around potential regional opportunities, regional projects. And I suspect we may be coming to you with that same question at a future meeting as well. So just wanted to, again, just elevate the thought process that we're putting forth on the American Rescue Plan. We'll continue to do so over the months ahead. One other quick update. We have been meeting virtually and doing things virtually for a long time. And I just have to, again, give a big shout out to our staff that's done a great job remotely since March of 2020. With some of the changes that are starting to come forward from the governor's office, I've let staff know that I anticipate that Triangle J offices will probably open back up to the public on or around June the 1st. Still a lot to think about with that and how we'll reopen and exactly how we'll open for public meetings, but just wanted to go ahead and let the board know that as of right now, the plans are to reopen our offices on June the 1st, but a lot more information will come in the coming weeks around that. So with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Right. And just a few notes. The nominating committee has met, and that presentation will be made at the May meeting. the May meeting, and we will determine at some point whether we will have a in-person meeting or continue as a virtual meeting. But Lee and the staff will make that decision. I was very interested in the infrastructure and broadband comments earlier in the presentation, and obviously Governor Cooper and President Biden have some other initiatives that they hope to make it even bigger. I know that festivals and community events are being planned in various communities. We do have a new normal, and that's good. So if we can, last meeting we did not have the roundtable, but for all the communities, but if you can perhaps give a 30-second activity that's going on in your community, we can share it and then close the meeting. So I'll start with Archer's Lodge, or and go through the alphabet, or whoever wants to participate certainly can.
I'm happy to go alphabetically if you'd like, Don.
Okay.
Aberdeen, and feel free to say that you'd like to pass if you'd like to pass, but Aberdeen.
This is Wilma Laney. Right now, things just seem to be going good, and we're all looking for the governor to give us direction so that we can get back to normal. So that's all I have, and I wish everybody the best.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Apex.
In Apex, the big thing that's going on now is a downtown improvements project we got going on with some spaces for people to hang out, potentially a curbless road situation right in the downtown area, some parking as well. So that was one thing in our budget that we did not cut the planning of in 2020, and I'm really excited now because we're getting ready to do the engineering for it.
It's awesome. Archer Lodge. Okay, Benson. Broadway. Carborough.
Yeah, we've got several events that we're doing virtually that have been traditional in-person events, but we've been going forth with virtual. So April was our poetry month. We have our music makers event starting up, and Sunday is Carborough Day, which hopefully this year will be the last time we'll have to do it virtually. And last week for Earth Day, and this is connected with our Carborough Community Climate Action Plan. We held a small food footprint food vendor event with micro businesses. So we're trying very hard to keep the ball moving ahead, and I just want to thank you all regionally for not only thinking regionally, but I know how hard this work is, and sticking with it and knowing you all are out there doing the same work makes me very hopeful. So thank you.
Thank you. Carrie?
Hey everybody, this is Jennifer Robinson. One of the things that I think is noteworthy that Carrie is involved in is the decision to move forward with our elections this fall. As many of you know, the census is delayed, and it's stymieing the elections for cities or towns that have districts, which we do. But we've decided to operate under the authority that's given by the state to do redistricting based on data in between census times. and we'll just see if we get sued. That's kind of where we are. We're moving forward, and we're going to see if a lawsuit is in our future. We're hoping it's not. That's about it.
Thank you, Jennifer. City of Durham. Durham County.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Deidreana Freeman, Durham City Council. And similar to the town of Cary, I think we're moving forward with our city elections, acknowledging that we won't be able to do the redistricting, acknowledging also that we don't have to do redistricting this year. It's not mandated in that way. And so I know we'll move forward. I think it's just that also acknowledging we're trying to move forward from COVID and opening back up. I think much of our activities are starting to come back online. We're focused on vaccine equity and acknowledging the disparity and who's getting vaccinated and who's not, and trying to address that. I also know we're losing our police chief to Memphis, Tennessee, and so you should all be on notice that we might steal yours. I think just acknowledging we also confirmed our interim city manager as our city manager. And so Wanda Page is now serving as our city manager, and we're excited about what's coming ahead. And I think that's about it.
Thank you. Durham County. Fuquay Varina.
Yes, Larry Smith here in Fuquay Varina. Just one thing to announce. The final segment of our Judd Parkway, which is the loop around our center town core, opens this Friday. And it's been a long time coming. We're very excited about that. And the second thing, hopefully in the next month, we may start exploring when we might get back to in-person board meetings. We're beginning to discuss that a little bit. Not quite there yet, but we're thinking about it. So that's all we got.
Great, thank you. Garner.
Yeah, hi, we're working on budgets over in Garner. Otherwise, we'll pass.
Hillsborough.
Oops, sorry about that. Well, definitely budget season. We've had our mini retreats, but last Fridays are alive and kicking. So come on down to Hillsborough. We also have kicked off our sustainability planning. Our reimagining public safety is well under progress. We just forged a new partnership with our Fairview neighborhood for community. They already have use of one of our public safety community center, and it will be much more used as the community center. Matt, please jump in if I'm forgetting anything. If Matt's there.
Not sure if he is. Feel free to jump in if you are, but I'll move on to Holly Springs.
Yeah, hey, Sean McGrath here. Things are busy. Our economic development folks have been doing some awesome work in Holly Springs this last year. That is paired with a record number of housing starts, a record number of housing permits in 2020 during the pandemic for our community. We also continue to do in-person board meetings or council meetings, and this last week we actually opened up to in-person constituent comments, so public comments, and we're looking forward at how we go both virtual public comments and in-person public comments for those that might not be able to do that in the future, but we continue to go that vector. And I ask for all your thoughts and prayers. Mayor Sears made it publicly announced in the last couple of days that he is going through a serious illness right now. He's currently in the hospital doing that, getting treatment. So please ask for your prayers for Mayor Sears.
Thank you, Sean. Nightdale.
Yes, it's Jessica Day with Nightdale. Definitely sending our prayers for Mayor Sears. So thank you for giving us that information and allowing us to be able to do that. in Nightdale, like everyone, a lot going on. We are really hoping to be able to get back to in person and really the activities. We had a lot going on prior to, and want to get back to being able to host different things in the town, which I'm sure everybody is. One of the biggest things right now is we purchased land for a new fire station, and we have a new ladder truck. We did a ceremony for it last weekend, so excited about that. We brought on 10 new people in the fire department, so that's exciting as well. And as far as with events, we do have a new Veterans Memorial. We had just completed it prior to COVID, and so we haven't had any events or anything there, and we're hoping that Memorial Day we could do kind of in hybrid. We'll still do some of it online, but possibly do something there for the veterans that we will be honoring. So hoping to do that coming up, and then from there waiting to hear the announcements on what we can start planning and doing in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Lee County. Oh, you're muted.
Did you call for Lee County?
I did.
I'm sorry. For whatever odd reason, I got cut off. So,
not a problem.
I just want to, we are delighted that Abzena chose Lee County, thus helping us to grow our local life sciences industries. We are blessed to be centered in the heart of North Carolina in close proximity to our premier research facilities and institutions, and that will help further accelerate the impact that Abzena will have on our county, our state, and our country. We look forward to the beneficial economic impact for our community as well. The future tax relief for our citizens. We've incorporated a tax relief clause in our economic development policy. And we appreciate the foresight of our own Sanford Area Growth Alliance and local developers to provide state-of-the-art shell buildings, attracting new businesses. And we do know that one of our EDC employees have left us to Chatham County. So good luck, Chatham County.
Thank you. Morrisville.
Thank you. I guess the most important things going on is we have a bond referendum in 2021. We're assuming we're going to have elections, and that's going to be parks and transportation and other public facilities. So we're good at that. And we've gotten RFPs for our downtown in Morrisville. And our smart cities initiatives are going really, really well. I did want to give a shout out to Jennifer Robinson, who served really great with the League of Municipalities as president. And I really had the honor of serving on the NCLM task force on race and equity. And I look forward to sharing the report with everybody just in terms of inclusivity in the community. The final thing is just, I'm praying for Dick Sears as well, all of us, but also praying for India. 40% of our population is Asian Indian and probably 15% in Cary. And last Friday, there were 4 million cases of COVID. I have an entire family that my 92-year-old uncle has COVID. He had congestive heart failure, so he cannot get the vaccine. And now his whole family has it, all living in the same house. And so it's just been awful. I mean, there's just in the last few days, I've found out that at least 20 people with families there each have 10 people they've known that have died. So they're in what's called COVID hell right now. So whatever we can do to raise money through the American Red Cross. I'm working with the embassy to bring a congressman in to talk about U.S. efforts for relief. And I think the president's going to be talking about it tonight. So didn't mean it a downer, but whatever we can do. There's numerous charities, so I'll share them in an email, Elena, of where they can go. So
yes, please feel free to send me, Steve. Yeah. Thank you. Orange County.
Steve, I'm so sorry to hear all of that, particularly with the personal stories. Really hurts. In Orange County, the biggest news on my mind is we're about to lose our wonderful housing director. Emma Sutton has taken a job with a HUD technical agency, so she'll be doing work directly for HUD for numerous communities around the country. And how that happened is that Orange County has done such a splendid job in keeping folks in their housing. We've kept, through her efforts, we've kept 1,200 families out of foreclosure, and she's been around the country on Zoom showing what's going on here in Orange County, and because of that, she got snapped up. So that's my news.
Thanks, Sally. Pinehurst?
Yeah, we are in the middle of 2 small area plans and obviously the announcement of the USGA moving in. It's a beautiful thing, but it's kind of like a beautiful meteorite landing in the middle of town so it's kind of a challenge for us right now dealing with this big a project and these small area plans, and then all of a sudden the library, we have to take it over because it failed during COVID. And so we went from a very well-oiled machine to feeling a lot of stress, and we're feeling some guilt that we're doing these Zoom meetings on these big projects and not having the public there and on these massive big projects. And we're trying to push to have our public in our buildings in May. We might not be able to pull it off, but we think these projects are too big to do online. And, we really want to hear from them. But we see, we lost our key rock star, Natalie Hawkins, to economic development. And we're starting to find that she's kind of irreplaceable. And then we've lost some people in our planning department. So, Lee, we might be calling you guys, for some help, because we are, and we find ourselves in a little stressful situation. We also feel like you guys are real important to us because of all this growth, Aberdeen, Southern Pines, and Pinehurst. Transportation is way behind here, and we're in some trouble, and we're hoping that, the transportation part of this organization, we could maybe accelerate some projects, because we see like the traffic it's not just traffic, it's now possibly going to impact accidents, pedestrians being hit. I mean, it's starting to get out of hand down here. And so we see possibly leaning on you, this organization, because of our light staffing right now, leaning on you for transportation. And I love the idea of working with you on this Revitalization Act and getting us regionally to think regionally and how we can improve regionally on some of these projects. And I think you're the perfect group for that. So basically, I was trying to make the point how important this organization is to us, and what we're going through. It's nice to have someone to lean on. Thank you.
We need to record you, Kevin, for us. For all of our communications. You do a better job of selling us than we do. Princeton.
We are dealing with flood issues. We're working on grants for flood control, and our town has a challenge and opportunity we could double in 5 years. So that's good in many ways, but we have to have smart growth.
Thank you, Mayor. Roseville.
Thank you, Elena. We are also working on the budget. It looks like we may can do one this year without a tax increase. That's kind of what we're planning for. I hope we don't know for sure, but that's kind of direction it looks like after we've seen the first presentation that may take place. So we're in the middle of that. Growth is still strong here in Roseville. Just the last few months, we've approved more than a little bit more than 2,000 single-family units and almost 1,000 multifamily units. So we've got a lot of residential growth. The probably most exciting thing we got going on right now is we finally closed on some property we sold to some developers in downtown area that will hopefully break ground in a couple months on about a $55 million multi-use facility, or and I think that's really exciting for our downtown area. I will close by hearing all the prayers that need to be said. I remember last year at this time that we were really in the middle of this COVID thing a year ago, and really I mentioned the National Day of Prayer is May the 6th, which is next Thursday. And I remember last year doing a National Day of Prayer, we were just praying that we all survived. We really didn't know. And, fast forward a year now, a lot of us have made through it. A lot of us got a vaccine and made through it, but we still know there's a lot need to be prayed for, the ones that Steve mentioned in his family and Mayor Sears and all. We got a lot to be thankful for in this year's prayer, but we also got a lot to still pray for. So that's coming up May 6th, and just want to plug that. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thelma?
Here in Selma, we just had a new town manager join us, which we hired with the help of TJ Coggs, and we appreciate that. We finished up an incentive agreement with Adventure Development, who is building our Eastfield residential, commercial, industrial development, the corner of 95 and 70. We have a couple of new businesses opening up this coming month. Community Day, outside Community Day that the town is hosting as well to get everybody back together. And things are going fairly well in the town of Selma. We do have the flooding issues, sewer and water concerns are certainly at the top of the list for us right now, and we're ready to face those challenges going forward, particularly with regional cooperation. And we're excited on what the future holds as we pull out of this COVID season. Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. Smithfield. All right, Wake County.
Oh, I'm sorry, Elena.
Oh, sorry, Mayor.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. My apologies. I was double muted. So real quick, I just wanted to say thank you for the information that was shared this evening regarding the American Rescue Plan. That was very valuable information. So we're looking forward to more information on that. And again, thanks for all that the Triangle J does for the communities. In Smithfield, it's very busy. We've got a lot of development going on, a lot of development inquiries taking place now from not only local builders and developers, but national developers. Pretty much any land in Smithfield that's available is either sold or under contract now, especially any large tracts of land. Just about anything on Highway 70 west between Smithfield and Clayton is either for sale or under contract. So just like many of you on this call, things are development-wise are going very strong, and we feel very fortunate about that. We've got a lot of new housing developments that are started or in the works. Existing housing that's a couple of years ago, houses sitting on the market for 8-9 months are selling now within days. Multiple offers and above asking price. So many of you on this call, that's old hat for you, but for Smithfield, that is just unprecedented. We are adding on. We've just closed on loan to add on to our police department, which is much needed. We have broken ground and construction has started on expanding our water plant, and many of you may have seen a Triangle Business Journal article in the last few weeks about some development that's taking place, or developers that are put together some very large tracts of land and looking to have about 3,000 homes planned, plus other commercial development for that area. So that's going to be a long-term project. But also we hope to be able to announce in the next 2 weeks a very large economic development project for a company that's potentially going to locate in our new West Smithfield Industrial Park. So that's going to be some very exciting news for the town of Smithfield, and hopefully be able to provide some great paying jobs for the citizens of Smithfield and Johnston County. So a lot of great things going on, and a lot of it's due in part to some of the partnerships and cooperations that we have with Triangle J. And in closing, I would like to say, if you have not, please consider writing your legislators in opposition of House Bill 401 and Senate Bill 349. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
Thanks for adding that.
Wake County.
Hi, this is Susan Evans. Enjoyed hearing from everybody this evening and all the exciting things that are going on. Well, we've had a very exciting week in Wake County. Speaking of economic development, I'm sure it's no secret to anyone on this call that Apple made a big announcement this week to locate a large facility in the Wake County portion of the Research Triangle Park. This is really big news. I just really want to give kudos to our Wake County Economic Development staff, which is a joint project between the county and the Greater Raleigh Chamber. Some of you may recall that Apple was rumored to be considering coming here in 2018, and they backed away for a number of reasons. But we have been relentless, and our staff has been working behind the scenes on this with Apple ever since then. So it never was a dead issue. We just had to keep plugging away. And now I'm happy to report that they have made the decision to come and build this facility. And of course, you know, as has been mentioned earlier in reference to other similar expansions, it will put pressure on infrastructure, but certainly housing in our area is already a challenge, but in traffic and transportation infrastructure and all of those things. But this is a great thing for our region. And as you well know, the people that work and live as a result of this expansion will not just be in Wake County, and this will be a ripple effect all throughout the Triangle J area. So we're very excited about that. And basically the plans are that this facility will become their premier R&D and engineering facility. I mean, it will eventually be larger and house more of that than they actually do in their Cupertino, California facility. So they are saying that they could eventually have 10,000 people in this area. So really, really huge. On another really exciting note, maybe not quite as related to the types of issues that Triangle J works with, we in Wake County, the commissioners had a press release today to announce a program that we are piloting to begin to provide a preschool program for 3-year-olds in the low-income realms of our group. You know, we currently have North Carolina Pre-K funded by the state with county assistance that provides for 4-year-olds to attend Pre-K if they are at or below 200% of the poverty line. After many years, well, about 6 or 7 increasing years of investment with county funds to match what the state was doing with that 4-year Pre-K program, we have finally been able to assist Wake County Smart Start with reaching what they consider full saturation of having a slot available to all the qualifying children in the 4-year-old range who desire a placement in a preschool slot. And so now we are embarking on a pilot program to expand to 3-year-olds who fit the same metrics at or below the 200% poverty line. So we are planning to fund in next year's budget just the planning and administrative cost, and working together with Smart Start, who will administer the program. And then in 2022, hope to start piloting with just a handful of 3-year-old classes located in some of the providers who also already offer the 4-year preschool programs. And then we'll hope to expand from there. It'll be a big undertaking. This will be all county funding because the state does not provide funding for this 3-year-old group. But I'm a former school board member, for those of you who don't know, so I'm really, really excited about education, and all the studies and all the research have been so clear about the quality of early childhood care and education and the difference that it can make on children's success in school. And so, we hope to grow this program and, find the funding that we need, and maybe get some business partners to join us with that, so that hopefully within 10 years we're meeting the full need. So just very excited about that, and I hope that provides some inspiration to others as well. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Wendell.
Thank you. I know we're getting towards the end, so I'll try to be quick. I'll probably take more than 30 seconds. Quick fun stuff. We got Farmers Market cranking up this coming Saturday, so we're excited about that. We also have our soccer and baseball programs there up and running in full force. Looks slightly different, but everybody's having a good time. Heavy lifting stuff. We are working on updating our comp plan currently. Obviously, we're in budget season as well. Typically, these conversations are either or type things. Luckily, this year in Wendell, we're having a lot of and conversations. So we're getting a lot of stuff done. We've got some land acquisition stuff going on. It's much needed for our police department, for park space. We got a new town hall project coming too. We got a 5-year pavement plan. We got a resurfacing program. And we also have a start on a storm water management program too. So lots of great stuff. And again, a lot goes into it, as everyone here knows, but growth wise, Wendell, we're taking pictures and putting shovels in the ground all the time. And it's fun to be a part of it. Obviously lots of concerns about growth, but I feel like we're doing a great job managing it. And we're trying to figure out a way to get the public back in to our town board meetings. We have a very outdated town hall, HVAC system, et cetera. But we've got lots of items that are in need of citizen discussion. And so we're trying to figure that out and hopefully come up with a plan for that here pretty soon. So all is well in Wendell.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Wilson's Mills. Not sure if David may not be on anymore. That may be it.
Thank y'all very much. I thought it was important to have the roundtable. We've not had it in several meetings, and we did go over time, but I think everybody enjoyed the meeting, and particularly the presentations. I thought the first presentation was excellent. With that, is there any other business? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Deidreana Freeman, Durham.
Second, Sean McGrath.
And we'll do this by voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Sure.
This has been a great meeting. I look forward to our next meeting, if we can be in person or virtually. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Thanks.